Hello, this is BBC News. I'm Lewis Vaughan-Jones with the latest headlines for viewers here in the UK and around the world. Russia claims a strategic victory in Ukraine, saying its troops have captured the eastern town of Soledar. The Manchester City footballer, Benjamin Mendy, is found not guilty of rape and sexual assault, but he faces a retrial on 2 counts. Tributes are paid to Lisa Marie Presley, the only child of Elvis, who's died at the age of 54. And campaigners vow to challenge a court ruling that outlaws wild camping on England's Dartmoor National Park. Hello and welcome to the programme. Russia says its forces have completed the capture of Soledar, a small town in eastern Ukraine that's been the focus of intense fighting. Moscow called it an important step in its offensive, which would allow Russian troops to cut off Ukrainian forces in nearby Bakhmut. If Russia's claims are true, it would be the first Ukrainian town it's captured since July, after 6 months of Russian military setbacks. But Ukraine's President Zelensky says the battle in Soledar is still underway. Our Ukraine correspondent James Waterhouse reports.
A salt mining town under Russian assault. Soledar has become a story of carnage and contradiction. After months of bloody fighting, an attempt by Russia to give a clear message. For the first time, a claim to be in complete control. And that this town is the start of something bigger. The capture of Soledar became possible due to the constant destruction of the enemy, says Russia's defense ministry, by ground attack, aircraft, missiles and artillery. But Ukraine is saying fighting continues in Soledar. Our troops are holding defense against the enemy. Ukraine has resisted Russia's attack here for months. The price is getting heavier.
We will never give up. This is our Soledar, our city, and we will not give it to anyone. Ukraine is ours. As soon as we see the Russian soldiers, we will hit them.
The Kremlin hasn't had anything to cheer about for the last 6 months since it last captured a major location. Soledar would change that, but it's also why Kyiv is hinting at a possible retreat. It's because the last time a city fell, Russia made minimal gains, and Ukraine retook swathes of territory elsewhere. It's also why Soledar is unlikely to alter the course of this war. We were in the nearby city of Bakhmut last weekend, an urban battlefield that couldn't have felt further from the politics of control. Ukraine is trying to portray its own momentum.
The aggressor must be defeated on the Ukrainian land where he came, so that it won't be necessary to fight on the lands of other European nations later. And we need to do it now, so that Russia does not get a break, does not have time to adapt and restore its strength. This year is crucial.
More Western weapons are on their way to Ukraine. The fear is, without them, Russia's advance might not stop at Soledar. James Waterhouse, BBC News.
Well, let's speak now to Elizabeth Shackelford, Senior Fellow in US Foreign Policy at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs, a think tank. Thanks so much for coming on the programme.
Thank you.
So what do you make of this latest development?
Well, I'll start by saying it's very hard to independently verify whether Russia has taken Soledar at this point, but let's make the assumption that they have. And, that's contested, but they've certainly been making gains there. I would disagree with Russia's claim that this is a strategic victory. It's certainly a tactical step towards overrunning Bakhmut, which is part of the overall goal of taking the Donbass, but it's not a very big step along that path. So what I find more notable is, as has already been indicated, this is Russia's first victory in a very long time. So even if it's a small one, my question is, does this indicate that Russia has regained its ability to conduct offensive operations? And if that's the case, we'll find that out over the coming days and weeks as we see what happens further in their operations into the there.
And by defensive operations, you mean basically its ability to hold territory that it takes?
I would say, apologies, offensive operations, whether it's able to continue progressing further, and taking more territory, and also retaining what it's taken, which has been its problem over the past number of months. I mean, this is the first victory that they've had in months, and it's very important for the Russian military's morale and for Putin's public appearance back home that they have this victory. So that appearance is probably the most important part of this victory for Putin.
And especially with things like morale and recruitment, as you mentioned. Let's move to the Ukrainian side of this equation, and more broadly, I suppose, supply of military, hardware of all descriptions will be vital.
Absolutely. And, this breakthrough by Russia, if that's what it becomes, is only more of an indication of how important that Western support and additional military supplies are. And I think it's going to really put the spotlight on this debate currently happening with many of the Western supporters over the fighting vehicles. We have had some indications last week that Germany, the UK, and the US were all going to be providing some. I've heard indications today that the UK has effectively committed to providing some, and that's going to be really important for their ability to push back against Russia here. So we're seeing a pattern of debating over whether to provide more advanced and different types of weaponry. Ultimately, over the course of the past year, the decision tends to be to provide them. So I think that the timing here is going to be of the essence with those fighting vehicles.
Interesting. And just to go back to the Russian side now, just before I let you go, this fighting group, the Wagner mercenaries that fight alongside the Russian troops, it's a peculiar relationship.
It is, and I would say that's another thing that I've been watching come out of this. And some of what we've seen come out from the Russian Ministry of Defense this week is indicating that there's some tensions there. There's definitely tension between the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Wagner Group, and who's claiming victories and who's in the lead. So I would say that's something to watch to see where that relationship goes, who's taking the lead, and who has Putin's ear on that. But by no means has it been a small part. The Wagner Group's efforts to recruit out of prisons, if you can call it that, press service out of prisons, has certainly been a part in raising the numbers of people that Russians have to throw at this battle, and that's certainly one of their biggest assets.
Elizabeth Shackelford, thank you so much for coming on the programme. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, there's been an explosion on a gas pipeline connecting lithium